This will be part 2 of taking up our database reading assignment. What is database or data mining and knowledge discovery in databases? Just having information in a database isn't really sufficient. It doesn't justify the data storage facilities. It doesn't require the investment in the, or doesn't justify the requirement of software for storing and working with that data. Companies collect data for a purpose, and the purpose is to determine buying patterns and for their customers. So what they try to figure out is, depending on where customers are in certain stages of life, or depending on what customers do for certain activities, what they would be most likely to buy, and then to advertise those particular items that would be most interesting to that customer. And why would they want to do that? Basically, it's all about targeted advertising. TV commercials are really expensive, for instance, and you have no idea who is really watching that commercial. So if you're really lucky, you might get, let's say, 1 in 10,000 viewers to actually purchase an item advertised. If you can purchase or present an advertisement to a much more defined, better defined target market, you might be able to, perhaps instead of having 1 in 10,000 customers, it might be 1 in 100 or 1 in 50. And then you can think about it that way, then your advertising dollars are spent much more efficiently. So the marketing people, they form those purchasing predictions based on other customers' past performance and the predicted performance of newer customers, and that gives a target marketing. And there's a target article link in here that you could have a look at. That one was an article on Forbes website about how Target figured out a young lady was pregnant well before her rest of the family knew. And that was basically just based on that particular young lady's purchase habits. Data warehousing is the actual storage of the information that's collected, be it when a customer loyalty card such as Air Miles is swiped, or Shoppers Optimum is swiped after making purchases, when somebody completes an online transaction as a signed-in customer, when you as a Google person start to sign in and then search for various things on the internet, and then depending which pages you leap to, so your web browsing habits or your characteristics, and then perhaps to an eventual purchase through a store, that sort of thing is all recorded and then related and stored, so that at some point in time it can be searched or queried by a business to determine, again, purchase habits. Data design factors for database elements. The reports, basically, what sort of information do you want to see? How do you want it sorted? How do you want it grouped together so that it makes output from the database queries readable and more useful? The fields in a database, what kind of data type, be it text or integers or lookups or whatever, or even graphic, and also which field would be a primary key and how that key would be assigned, whether it's numbers or something else. Usually it's recommended that it's just a self-assigned or an automatically assigned integer. Tables need to be manageable size. They need to relate enough information that makes sense, but not too much. So you want to have your table so that if you were to build a form from it, then the form would actually fit on a usable part on the screen and not have to overlap. And then as you were reading your table, you went from one side to the other. You didn't have to use a horizontal scroll there if you were going to go look through it. So that's why you would have a table for like personal information or contact information for a customer, and then if you had other things for the customer, then you might put that into a separate link table and link them together by the primary keys. Forms should be easy to use. They should have data checking if it's possible. So if you remember, if you've ever seen an email address, the email address always has one of those in it. So one of the data checking things for an email address could be that character is given in the email address. Could also have force you to put in the letters and number alternations in postal code, for instance, or in a zip code. It would make sure that you had 5 characters and then 5 characters, not 6. So then you force customers to put in information in a certain way, and then that makes that your data stays consistent, as we talked about in part 1 of our take up assignment. A table is a combination of rows and field data. So the rows, the records are horizontal, and the fields are generally vertical. You've seen that as you built it. An advanced query basically allows you to pick out more than 1 or 2 fields in a database and compare them with the equal to, less than, greater than, perhaps make some sort of calculation or something like that so that you can pull out worthwhile information. So for instance, if you were looking for your database for customers for a certain area, you could see and check to see if all of their addresses were, or check for addresses that were only from this particular postal code, for instance. And then also perhaps made a purchase in the last 6 months. And then you could email them out a flyer or a coupon or something like that that would encourage them to come back to your business. Forms give you 1 record's worth of information from a table. That makes it a lot easier to read, especially in a large table. It also keeps users out of your tables, because playing around with data inside a table can lead to inconsistency, mess up your table. At least in a form, and then they can only mess up 1 record at a time. It makes it a little more difficult, and that's just kind of looking at it from the unoptimistic perspective. You can also set up forms so that they can be read-only rather than editable, and you'll have seen that as you've, or will see that as you work through your LibreOffice base tutorials on forms. And then the last question is, why would some people say that that database or that collection of information in databases is an invasion of personal privacy? I would say that one thing that people don't really think about is, when you make a certain purchase, it's only one little tiny bit of information about you collected over in at one particular time. But over time, that collection of a number of events about your life does give a different picture than just single snapshots of instances in time. And then when you combine that with purchases not only at, say, like Canadian Tire or any other place that you happen to use your MasterCard, and perhaps even with your online shopping, then somebody can get a pretty good image of what your life really looks like, what sort of make an impression about what sort of morals, etc., that you have, and make some other things about what you're doing and where you're going in your life. And I think that's it for this. So you can also, I hope, have read through some of the responses that I've put in here. And thank you for watching.